Okay, we'll begin. I hope today the voice is very clear and you can hear me properly, isn't it? If so, you can just type in the chat so that we begin. If you can hear me loud and clear, you type in the chat so that we begin the class. Okay, I think someone said that we are clear. So last class, also I need the positive comments on the WhatsApp wall or about the class, because last time there were so many negative comments, isn't it? So we'll begin. Last lesson, we talked of journal entries, and I told you journal entries are very vital, or it's a very important thing that you should know before you start preparing financial statement, isn't it? So we'll just look at an example and see how we will use our, just a minute, see how we will use the journal entries to tackle this question. So the question was set in an audit nature, but the required, let me just go to the required. The required of the question was prepare an audit schedule for 8 columns with the following headings. The first one is the original trial balance without adjustment. And the second column is the adjustment column. Then you prepare a draft. Profit and loss statement and the draft financial statement of financial position. So we'll start. So here is where the journal entries apply. Actually, you cannot prepare a trial balance without the journal entries. But since we are at an advanced level, we will not be going into creating each journal entry, writing there this journal entry goes to this one. So we'll go direct to the trial balance. So we'll start with the original trial balance without adjustments, isn't it? So what I do, just come up here, isn't it? Control bold to bolden, then you write an adjusted trial balance, isn't it? So on a trial balance, we always have some 2 columns. So I'll skip these 2 then here. So the first one is the debit, the debit tab. Then the second one will be the credit column, isn't it? So we shall just go as, so instead of retyping this here, I'll just come and copy. So I place my cursor there, I press Control Shift, then I press down arrow, then I press Control C, isn't it? Then I press Control Backspace to jump to the active cell here. Then I'll do Control V to paste, isn't it? I may widen the space so that they look a little bit cleaner. So this one is the unadjusted one, isn't it? So maybe I'll remove this column here, because so I'll just select it this way up to the last one there. Then I do Control minus, then I press Enter to move the cells to the left, isn't it? So I'll just merge these 2 here, Alt HMC to merge and center, Alt HMC to merge and center. Then I will also bolden these ones, Control Bold. Then I'll do Alt H BO for a bottom border, isn't it? So we'll start now. So or maybe I can just also put the outside border so that it looks clean as we go by. Alt HBT, isn't it? Then I also do here Alt HBT. Alt HBT. That way. So then I'll just go to start directly. So this is the unadjusted. So we are just using the accounts here, isn't it? So the capital. Capital, I told you, is a liability. Just I show you the trick here. So after I've selected that one, Control Shift plus, I move the cells down at least. So I said assets and expenses will have a debit entry, isn't it? Then we also said liabilities and incomes will have a credit entry, isn't it? So we shall just go to capital. You see, capital is a type of liability. So I just press equal sign and I take the value there so that I don't confuse, isn't it? We go to revenue. Revenue is an income, so it will go in as credit, isn't it? Equal signs. Then we have trade payables, isn't it? Trade payables is a liability, isn't it? So it will go in there. Then we have return outwards, isn't it? This one tends to be a little bit more confusing, but it's just the same thing, return outwards. So we had bought our goods and we are returning them outwards, isn't it? So like what are we doing? We are reducing our purchases because we had bought, isn't it? So and a purchase is more of an expense, so it has a debit entry, but now we are returning out, isn't it? So return outwards will be a credit entry. I press enter. Then expected loss as at January. So this one is an expected loss. It's not a loss that has been incurred, it's expected. So when something is expected, it becomes a liability, not an expense. Then we go to the next thing, discount allowed. So we are purchasing something, isn't it? And we are allowed a discount, isn't it? So it means our purchases increases. So that one will have a debit entry. So sorry, I have confused the explanation. Discount allowed, isn't it? We were selling to a customer, but we allowed him a discount, isn't it? So it's reducing our revenue. So like to reduce our revenue, we debit, isn't it? So for discount received is the one that I was explaining. So discount received, it's like now discount received is on purchases, isn't it? We were given a discount. So that one will have a credit entry because it's like an income, isn't it? We were given a discount. That's why we received the discount. So income server, as said. So that one is the tip I showed you. So discount received. Sorry, I take that one there. Then we have purchases, isn't it? So for purchases are more like expenses, isn't it? We are buying out. So purchases have a debit. Then we go to return inwards, isn't it? We bought, we sold some goods, isn't it? And they are being returned inwards, isn't it? So that one will have like it's like we are increasing our purchases. So that one will have a debit entry, isn't it? So equal sign. Where is it here? Enter. There we have our distribution costs. So distribution costs are the expense, isn't it? So like it is here. And just as you can see, the next thing we have drawings. Drawings are more like an expense, not a liability. So that one has a debit entry. We also have rents, rates and insurance, an expense as a debit entry. We have heating and lighting as a debit entry, isn't it? We have postage, stationery and telephone, debit entry. We have advertising as a debit entry. We have salary and wages up to credit loss, isn't it? Credit loss are like bad debts, isn't it? Bad debts are like expenses we have incurred. Also, they will have a debit entry. I'm telling you that because here we're just dragging them up to there, isn't it? They're just from the other side, even you can confirm the same thing. Then we have cash in hand. So cash in hand also has a debit entry because it's an asset, isn't it? Followed by cash at bank, also inventory, also trade receivables, also property, plant and equipment, isn't it? So I'll just drag again up to property, plant and equipment. Then we have depreciation. So the problem with depreciation is like let me say a contra asset, isn't it? So it means it reduces our PPE. So if it is reducing our PPE and our PPE has a debit entry. So to reduce them, we will credit. Sorry. So we must do equal sign, then accumulated depreciation, isn't it? Then depreciation expense for the year. So this one is an expense you've been already told that, isn't it? Enter. So it will be just adding up. So I'll do sum. I press tab, isn't it? Then I select everything. So I can just click here. Then I press Control Shift, up arrow, isn't it? And I must remember that I don't go to over to debit. So I'll just drag up to there because sorry. So I'll have to repeat Control backspace. Sorry. So this is the active cell. I'll go back here. Equal sign, sum. I press tab. Then I select the data. That way. Up to there. Control enter. Control backspace to the active cell, isn't it? And then I'll drag, isn't it? So I'll put comma so that it can easily be seen. You can see that now we have already created. So this is where this one was just the basic introduction. This is not where the journal entries apply, isn't it? This is just the first one. So the first question was like create an adjusted one. So for a trial balance, the debit column and the credit column should balance, isn't it? So we've just finished this one here, where you've been asked to prepare the original trial balance without adjustments, isn't it? So number 2, we've been told to prepare the adjustments, isn't it? So after you prepare the adjustments, you must also prepare the adjusted trial balance. So we'll go to adjustments. So this is where most of journal entries applies to the adjustment. So I'll just move here. So instead of again repeating drawing, isn't it? I'll just select the data, the tables, isn't it? I do Control C to copy, isn't it? I come here, first I select because I just want to copy the format, isn't it? Up to there. Then I press Control Alt V. I paste the format only, isn't it? Okay. That way, you can see that we are just pasting the format, isn't it? I also paste these two here, Control C. So this one, I'll just paste them directly, Control V, isn't it? So, and this one now, sorry, I'll come to this one here. I'll unmerge first because I had merged. So I just select this one, Control X, then I paste it here, Control V, isn't it? And I merge the two. I do Alt HBT. so that it looks clean a little bit. So here we'll do adjustments, control bolt, adjustments. Isn't it? So I'll merge the two also, merge and center, or Alt HMC to merge and center, isn't it? So also I'll just close it with Alt HBT so that it looks very clean, because they were requiring 8 columns. So we are 1, 2, 3, 4, isn't it? So let's do the adjustments. Sorry, let me go to the data. So you can see that as you begin your audit process, you discover the following adjustments that should be made to finalize the financial statement as you carry out substantive tests. Closing inventory, it is stated at 88.75, isn't it? So remember here we are doing the adjustment, isn't it? We are doing the adjustment. So we are not doing, so this one is on the final account, isn't it? So like I said, the closing inventory, we debit inventory, then we credit trading account, isn't it? But now we are doing so with the difference, because you can see here we had some inventory, isn't it? We had some inventory. So we are doing the difference here, so equal sign. So I'll take the balance there. Here's the closing inventory. I take that one minus the opening inventory, isn't it? And it is preferred because this will be adding the columns. So it's preferred that the inventory, the opening one, you just had typed it in so that you don't bring referencing problems, isn't it? So it's 78,000, 27,000, isn't it? I press enter. So 1048,000, isn't it? So you see, we have debited the inventory account. So what account should we credit? Isn't it? So we'll credit a trading account. So I'll introduce here another one. So the adjustments continue now. Trading account. Isn't it? And I'll do the same amount, Control C. Sorry. Control V, isn't it? I'll just adjust so that it's very thin. Sorry. So the amount was, or I just do equal sign and I take the amount, isn't it? So that is the first adjustment we've done, isn't it? This trading account, or you can just call it profit and loss, so that you don't confuse, isn't it? Profit or loss, not and loss. Sorry, maybe just a minute to think amount. Because they want to come out a little bit more challenging. So I said, we just call them profit and loss, isn't it? So we go to the second one. We've been told of insurance prepaid, isn't it? So a prepayment is like an asset, isn't it? So for an asset, so I can just equal sign instead of writing insurance prepaid, isn't it? Just let me sorry, just write insurance prepaid. So we are still under the adjustment columns, isn't it? So insurance prepayments, they are like assets, isn't it? I told you assets have a debit. You remember this one is our debit, this one is our credit, isn't it? So here equals the 560, isn't it? So, like if you have gone through the notes I sent on journal entries, you know that journal entries must have a double entry, isn't it? That's why we've debited inventory and credited profit and loss. So for prepayments, we will credit the expense account, isn't it? So on the expense account here, under review is the insurance, isn't it? And you can see that insurance, rent, rates, and insurance were on the same line, isn't it? So I'll make sure I credit this side, isn't it? Equal sign, I credit the amount there. Isn't it as simple as that double entry? Then I'll go to the next adjustment. So the next adjustment talks of heating and lighting accrued, isn't it? So I'll introduce accrued heating and lighting. So as an accrual will have a credit entry, isn't it? Let me just take this one up. Okay, so we'll credit this side, isn't it? Like 680 because it's accrued, isn't it? And now I'll debit the account related, isn't it? And the account related is here, heating and lighting, isn't it? Heating and lighting here. So remember, I'm still under adjustments, isn't it? You are adjusting the accounts. So heating and lighting, you make sure they are on the same 19, that way, equal sign, the amount 680, isn't it? Then we move on, we have prepaid rates, isn't it? So I just write, even I can just write prepaid rates. So the prepaid rates, let me just, remember prepayments have a debit one, so we enter them as a debit under the adjustments, isn't it? Here it is. I'll take that one, enter. And now the double entry of the prepayment, I'll be crediting the account, isn't it? And you also have here, the account is on the same, isn't it? So I'll come here. You remember this 560 we had already dealt with it, isn't it? So I'll do plus the 27,500, enter, isn't it? So remember, so the double entry of this one, I've included it here. You can see here it is G33 plus D37, the one for prepayments and the one for insurance prepaid and the one for rate prepaid, isn't it? Then this file I send over and I'll be sending the assignment. Let me see where the class will reach today first, isn't it? Then we go to addition 5. We've been told that the expected credit loss is estimated as 1865, isn't it? So remember, this expected credit loss, maybe in other terms, the terms that you know, it is called the allowance for doubtful debts, isn't it? Allowance for doubtful debts, isn't it? Like you're expecting a certain credit loss, isn't it? So this one is an allowance for doubtful debts. So and it was in the trial balance. So I'll just go up here. It is here, expected credit loss. So it was unexpected. That's why it's like a liability. And we are being told it is expected to increase to 1865, isn't it? So we want to know the increase, isn't it? And remember, expected credit loss is a contra asset. It's same like depreciation. The allowance of doubtful debts reduces the account receivables, isn't it? But remember here, I'm being given the closing balance. So I want to know the difference up because it's an adjustment, isn't it? We are not on the adjusted trial balance. The difference up, isn't it? So it was 1865, 123, minus the 12, isn't it? 609. And just like to know if an increase in allowance of doubtful debts, isn't it? The journal entry, I think it was there. So like you credit the allowance of doubtful debts account and you debit the bad debts account, isn't it? So here we introduce another account, bad debts account. So bad debts. So we are debiting because it's an expense, isn't it? So we debit with the same amount. The 609, enter, isn't it? Then we continue. So we have finished up there. Then we go to errors or omissions identified, isn't it? So the first one is an invoice of goods sold was not posted. So if it was not posted, it means our sales have been understated, isn't it? So to increase our sales, we credit. So we come to our revenue equals, we credit the amount. Isn't it that way? Then so the corresponding, the debit entry for this credit will be debiting our account receivables, isn't it? So where is our account receivables? That one we just confirm in the notes. So we will be debiting here on the journal entries notes I send you, isn't it? We'll be debiting the account there. Then we move on. Isn't it? Drawing of goods not reflected in the drawings of 450, isn't it? So I'll come to drawings. Drawings is like an expense, but it comes under the equity, isn't it? Equals sign, isn't it? 450, 1, 2, 3, isn't it? Had not been reflected, so it means it will increase our drawings. That's why we are debiting it, isn't it? And now we will credit goods withdrawn. We'll credit goods withdrawn, isn't it? So goods withdrawn, the same amount, equal sign, 450, isn't it? So we'll continue again now to, so an additional credit loss was omitted of 220, isn't it? An additional credit loss was omitted of 220. So this is where some a little bit trick comes in. Remember our credit loss, where is it? Here our credit loss. So additional, so we'll debit because it's an expense, isn't it? Credit loss is like bad debt, isn't it? 220, 1, 2, 3, isn't it? Then, so after we have debit, it's just the same thing to allowance of doubtful debts, isn't it? After we've debited our credit loss account, we need to credit our allowance for doubtful debt or expected credit loss. But remember, already our expected credit loss, had been given a fixed figure of 1865. So we will not debit the amount. So here is where we say allowance of doubtful debt is a contra asset. It reduces our account receivable. So what we will do, we will credit our account receivable, isn't it? Like in short terms, let me say this. People are owing you money, isn't it? People are owing you money. People who owe you money are called account receivables, isn't it? So there are some people who cannot pay you, so we'll have to reduce our account receivables, isn't it? As simple as that. So it's down here equals the 220, isn't it? Then we continue. Sorry, just and then we've been told depreciation expense for the year was understated. An understatement means it was stated at a low price, isn't it? So we'll debit the adjustment. We'll be debiting our 120, 123, isn't it? We'll be debiting our depreciation expense while at the same time crediting our accumulated depreciation, isn't it? Credit our accumulated depreciation. So I'll just get more lines up to here, isn't it? Alt HBT. So first, I'll remove the borders here. So Alt HBN to remove the borders. Also here, Alt HBN to remove the borders, isn't it? Then I'll do this now. Alt HB. So maybe I can do L for a left border, then Alt HBR for a right border. Isn't it? Because if I imagine, then Alt HB L for a left border in the middle, isn't it? So now I'll come to find the total here. I can just do Alt HBP for a top border. This is just for an illustration, isn't it? I'll come now to find the sum, press tab, and then I select the data up to the topmost. There, Control Enter, Control Backspace to jump to the active cell. Then I just drag along, isn't it? I can do this Control Bold, isn't it? Also these two, Control Bold. Maybe I'll input the comma sign so that I can easily see, isn't it? So I'll do Alt HBU to show that that one is the balancing figure. Also this one, I'll do Alt HBU, isn't it? That way. So you can see also our adjustment column has balanced, isn't it? So what is remaining is we create the adjusted trial balance, isn't it? So I'll just copy the two here, Control C, I paste them, Control V, I adjust. Sorry, so this one I'll rename it to adjusted trial balance. Isn't it? So maybe just I widen, I remove them so much. I just widen so that it looks something like that one, isn't it? So I come here to the debit column, I start with equal sign, isn't it? So I'm linking this one plus the adjustment. So I'll take the first column there. I know it's empty. I add, so I'll add the debit adjustment and less the credit adjustment, isn't it? Control Enter. Then I'll drag down up to there, isn't it? So sorry, there are some sums that I'm missing. Control Z, go back, isn't it? So just like maybe we just add step by step, because if we drag down, I can see that there is something missing, isn't it? So this one, just the same thing. It will be 0 because this one plus this one minus the credit above here will be 0. So I just go to the second one. So this one will remain the same. So equal sign, I'll take that one, isn't it? Equal sign. So this one, I'll take this one plus the adjustment, isn't it? I wanted so that you can see that, you see, like for this adjustment, it was saying that, yes, let me, okay, sorry, let me just come again on the closing inventory. But if please mute. So like on closing inventory, we will look at it on the second question. And also okay, I can share the workings. I'll share the file, the Excel file, after we finish preparing a financial statement of a single entity, when we'll be moving to group accounting, isn't it? So for the closing inventory, I'll come again to the next question also we have. So we move to the next thing. Here you can see that there was no adjustment on return outward. So I'll just take it as it is. Then I'll just drag down, because also so this one comes to the debit column. So where am I? Oh, that one was the trade payables. So for return outwards here, there are no adjustment, isn't it? It remains the same. Then for our expected loss, you can see that it had an adjustment, isn't it? And both adjustments are on the credit column. That means we are adding, isn't it? It was a liability, and it was overstated. And here you are just given this amount. You can just check it in the question. You can see here the expected credit loss is estimated at 1665, isn't it? So it will just come in as it is, isn't it? That's why we are not doing the adjustment on the credit loss, isn't it? Because you are told it will be 1665. Then we continue. So we go to discount allowed. Discount allowed will come in as it is, isn't it? Then also discount received will come in as it is. Also purchases, there were no adjustment. I just widen so that it's seen. Also for return outwards up to drawings, isn't it? So I'll drag up to drawings. Then you can see that our drawings are on the debit column, and also the adjustment is on the debit column. So we are adding, so it will be this one here. You add the 450 that was understated, or it was not disclosed, isn't it? So now, see here is where there's a difference, isn't it? You can see for our rent, rates and insurance, it's an expense. That's why it's on the debit column. But the adjustment is on the credit column. So what do? We minus. But it will remain on the debit column because it's still on a positive, isn't it? We move to our heating and lighting. They are both on the debit column. So I'll be just adding them. Then for our stationery, there are no adjustment. Also for advertising and also for salaries, isn't it? So I'll just drag because it will be just reflecting what was there. So advertising, salary and wages up to there. So for our credit loss, they are both on the debit column. So I'll be just adding, isn't it? Then for our cash in hand, no adjustment. Also for our cash at bank, no adjustment. So you see our inventory here, this one was the opening inventory, isn't it? So if we add, we come to find our closing inventory, isn't it? And you can see that closing inventory we are told to be 8875. We continue. So we go to our account receivable. So we will add what was not posted and less what is on the credit side, isn't it? What is on the credit side? Isn't it? This one there are no adjustments, so I just take it as it is, isn't it? So this one will add because they are both on the credit side, so accumulated depreciation was increasing. Also, our depreciation increased, so it would be this one here plus the 120 of the increase, isn't it? You see, now you don't stop there. You continue because the adjustment must reflect equals. So this one there, isn't it? And this one equals this one there, isn't it? So as you can see, this one was the adjustment. So there were no adding or there were no opening balances. In short, here, isn't it? I just drag. Isn't it? Then I'll come now to get the totals. I start with Alt HPU to put the borders like that, isn't it? Then I do equal sign, sum, I press tab, and I check the whole data. Up to there, isn't it? I do control enter. Then I also come again with it up to there. Then I do Alt HBR for a right border. You can see the border there, isn't it? Then I'll now move down here, equal sign. Sorry, I can just drag from left here this way, isn't it? Control Alt. And you see also it is balancing, isn't it? Just let me just put in the thick border, Alt HBT. You can see that it is balancing also. So that one is the adjusted balance, Alt HBT. Just putting in the borders, isn't it? You can see that it's balancing. So now what is remaining? It is now to go to create the statement of profit and loss. The first thing, isn't it? This question was named to be as an audit question, but actually it's more of preparing financial statement, isn't it? Here I'll do Control Alt, then Shift net balance. Enter. Then maybe just it becomes there. So equal, watch out. So our net balance, we are getting it from the trial balance. It will be the debit minus the credit, isn't it? Don't worry for a negative. Then I just drag down, isn't it? Up to there. And I'll put also the thick box outside Alt HBT, isn't it? Then now maybe I must be at least somewhere there so that I can see, isn't it? So we are just now we'll introduce another column called the tag column. Control enter, Control Alt, isn't it? So for a tag column, we will be writing how the account will be reflecting on the statement, isn't it? So the first one is the capital, so it will reflect as share capital. We move down, it will reflect as revenue, isn't it? We move down, maybe later we just call it payables because we just work, isn't it? Return outwards, isn't it? So, like, you can decide what to call it. You can just call it even return outwards, or you can call it purchases. But now, if I call it purchases, like it will automatically reduce the purchases. But because it's the first class, I'll show you the layout before we change. Then expected credit loss. So this one, I'll call it allowance of doubtful debts. In other terms, it's just the same thing. And today's class, I think it's very perfect because there is no negative comment. Actually, we've devised a method that we'll be using. So discount allowed, isn't it? So we allowed our customer a discount, isn't it? So it becomes like an expense, isn't it? In simple terms, isn't it? So I'll call it. So it may be like selling and distribution. It falls under selling and distribution. Distribution expense, isn't it? Then discount received, isn't it? Like we were buying and we were given some discount, isn't it? So it would be like an income, isn't it? Other incomes. Then now we have the purchases. So purchases will remain as purchases. Then we have return inwards, isn't it? So return inwards actually falls under, it's like an expense. Like if you want to know, isn't it? Just look on the unadjusted trial balance. I told you an expense has a debit entry, a liability and income has a credit entry, isn't it? You just look here and see how it falls. So it's like an expense. So this expense, I don't want to call it other expenses or other names because this expenses actually falls under cost of sale, isn't it? So I'll just call it return inwards. Then we have distribution cost. So remember, the distribution cost will fall under selling and distribution expense, isn't it? And then we have drawings. So drawings will be just drawings, and this one will be reflected in the equity part of the statement of financial position. Then we have rate, rents, and insurance. So this one can be called administrative expenses. Then we have heating and lighting, also administrative. Postage and stationery, administrative. Advertising, selling, and distribution. Salary and wages, you can just call it at administrative, but sometimes it falls under selling and distribution because maybe your workers are distributing maybe some goods, or isn't it? Then we have the credit loss. So it will, I just call it bad debt so that you understand faster. So it's an expense, isn't it? It's an expense. Then cash in hand. So you can call it cash and cash equivalent. Sorry. Isn't it same to bank? It will be cash and cash equivalent. Inventory. So this one I'll write closing so that I be very careful. Closing inventory. Isn't it? Then we have what else? We have trade receivables. So just as to name, I just call them receivables. So this one is property, plant, and equipment. Maybe I'll just use the abbreviation so that we go faster. PPE. Then this one, remember, accumulated depreciation, I told you, is a contra asset. Meaning of a contra asset, it reduces our PPE, so it will also fall under PPE. Then depreciation expense. So you can decide maybe you take it as a depreciation expense or just you put it under administrative expenses, isn't it? We come, so here you remember this profit and loss we adjusted because of closing inventory. So for the meantime, it will not have it, like it will tell you if we made a profit or a loss from this. So will not name it first because we will be adding. So insurance prepayment, so I just call them prepayments at once, isn't it? And then I'll call them accruals, prepayments, sorry. So you can see that we made some error because you can see these bad dates. We also had a bad date account, isn't it? There's no error because it's like just we could have added here the 609. It's not an error. We could add here the 609. So just to correct this error, I'll name the account same as that one, isn't it? Equals, or maybe I'll not use the equal sign. I'll just copy, Control C, so that Excel will automatically add Control V, isn't it? Just the same thing, but a proper way of doing it, this 609, we could have added to this to 20, isn't it? The better way, but so this one will be goods withdrawn, isn't it? Goods withdrawn. I go back, Control Home, go to jump the first cell. Maybe I'll adjust this tag column, isn't it? I'll do some Alt HBT to just make the work presentable. Then also Alt HBT, Alt HBT to make the work again presentable, isn't it? So I'll go now to start preparing the draft statement of profit or loss. So Control Bold, statement of profit or loss. Remember, you have to write the app things, the name, the year, isn't it? But here it's just in class. We're just doing some learnings, isn't it? So the first thing I'll do is I'll take the revenue. So Control C, Control V, isn't it? So anything that then, so return outward doesn't come there. Then return inwards, isn't it? Because we sold, isn't it? Return inwards. So remember, actually what we have written here, it's what must be here, isn't it? Everything must be as it is. So it's advised that you just copy, isn't it? Control V. Then from there, we'll get the net revenue. So I'll just bring in the net revenue. Control Enter, Control Bold, isn't it? After net revenue now, we'll be going to cost of sales, isn't it? So the cost of sales, we start with opening stock, isn't it? Opening stock. Then we go to purchases, isn't it? Then did you have any carriage inwards? No, but we had return outwards, isn't it? So return outwards. Remember, this return outward normally will be lessing it, isn't it? And it's advisable that you just copy as it is here. Any change in the spelling will not give the answer. Sorry. So return outward reduces our purchases, but Excel will consider that already, isn't it? Then after return outward, we have goods withdrawn, isn't it? We're just using these things that were here. We have goods withdrawn to reduce our purchases. I'll just copy it. Then you Control V. Then we have also closing inventory, isn't it? So closing inventory. Then what else do we have under it there? I think there's nothing else. So cost of sale, control bold, total. I'll just write cost of sale as cost, isn't it? Maybe I just remove the borders. So Alt HBN to remove the borders there. Then I'll merge the first one before I widen so that it looks clean at least, isn't it? Then we go to other incomes, isn't it? Other incomes. Then so we'll be going to expenses, isn't it? Revenue, payables. So ratherly, you can do this way. Control Shift plus just to add the cells, move the cells to the right. I had forgotten that one. Control X, Control V, isn't it? Just to know, just so that I be sure, this one I call it BS. This one goes to the profit and loss, so I'll call it PL, isn't it? So that BS is for balance sheet, isn't it? So that we just know where it will be falling. BS, return outwards goes to the P&L. Sorry, so I just want to be the same. P&L. Allowance of doubtful debt goes to BS. Sorry. Selling and distribution goes to PL. Other income goes to PL. Purchases going to PL. Return inwards PL. Selling and distribution PL. Drawings. This one goes to balance sheet. Sorry. Balance sheet. Administrative goes to PL. PL. Isn't it PL? Selling and distribution PL. Administrative PL. Bad debts PL. Cash and cash equivalent balance sheet. Balance sheet. Balance sheet. Isn't it? Receivables balance sheet. PPE balance sheet. PPE another balance sheet. Administrative PL. Isn't it? This one, so prepayments balance sheet. Accruals balance sheet. Prepayments balance sheet again. Bad debts PL. Goods withdrawn PL. Isn't it? So just so that you know where we'll be taking them, isn't it? So we are starting with the, so we are at other incomes, isn't it? Then so we'll go to expenses. So I'll just go directly. I'll copy the administrative expenses. So we are here. Control C. Control V. So distribution. So here you just take one. You don't take all, isn't it? Just take one. So bad debts also. Just take one. Cash and cash equivalent, receivable, PPE. Administrative expenses, we've already taken them. Also bad debts, we've already taken them. And also the goods withdrawn. So for our draft statement of profit and loss, there's nothing we've taken. Just I'll confirm goods withdrawn we've taken, balance, bad debts we've taken, administrative we've taken, also closing inventory, administrative expenses we've taken, selling and distribution we've taken. What is purchases we've taken, other incomes we've taken, selling and distribution we've taken, return inwards we've taken, return outwards also we've taken, payables, revenue we've taken. I think now everything under our statement we've taken, isn't it? I'll do that way. I'll remove maybe the two borders, Alt HBN, so that it comes clean, isn't it? So here I'll come here equals. So here I'll introduce a function. So sum if. I press tab. So you've been asked the range. So the range will be our tag column. I'll take the whole tag column. So it was just ending there, isn't it? I press F4. Sorry, this one is not locking with F4. I'll lock with $sign. So to lock with $ shift 4, isn't it? Then I want, so like it will be locking. So maybe just I lock the L also, shift 4. I also lock the L and 37, shift 4. If F4 is what we lock with, F4 is just press once, you don't have to repeat this many times locking it, isn't it? F4, isn't it? I press comma. Remember, we are still here. We are still here, isn't it? Let me just take it there that is seen, isn't it? So is that a comma? It must be that we know comma there. So the comma is here in front, isn't it? Comma. So I've been asked the criteria. So the criteria, I'm taking this one here, isn't it? And that one I'm not locking, comma, and I've been asked the sum range, isn't it? So the sum range, I'll be taking the net balance here. Up to there, the net balance in the adjusted trial balance. So I'll lock them. Here I'm locking with the F4, shift 4. That's why I'm locking each individual. But when you just drag down and press F4, it automatically locks the whole thing, not one by one. Isn't it? After that, when I close my brackets, I think you are seeing my cursor there, control, enter, control, backspace to jump to the active cell. You can see, maybe I just put the comma sign there. You can see that it's reflecting our revenue as a negative, isn't it? Of which there is no problem. So I just input a negative in front of the formula so that it reflects our sales that way, isn't it? Then I drag down. Isn't it? So, like, just to tell you, isn't it? Our revenue, so here is where, like, you make certain corrections, isn't it? Our revenue here, it will be reduced by, so you've sold out, it will be reduced by return inwards, isn't it? Of which it's okay, isn't it? I'll press Alt equals, Control Enter, Control Bolt, Alt HBP for a top border. So our revenue we have already finished, isn't it? So here, remember, we don't have, our opening stock cannot be shown on the adjusted trial balance, isn't it? So we'll take it from the unadjusted, because of opening inventory does not show. So where was the opening inventory? It was here, isn't it? I take it, enter, then I go back to where I was. So there's a, like, let me just explain here so that you understand properly, isn't it? You see, you can see our purchases is in bracket. In bracket means it's a negative sign. So this is what you are, like, normally you'll expect it to be on a positive side, but Excel will recognize it as a negative sign, so that instead of, we will not be lessing net revenue, isn't it? We'll be adding to closing stock. I'll show you. So our opening inventory will enter it as a negative. So, like, you see, just simple, this one you understand, isn't it? You see, opening stock we've entered as a negative. You always know cost of sales has opening stock plus purchases, isn't it? So opening stock, if it is negative, plus our purchases in negative, is like the same, isn't it? The same thing. And we come now to return outward, isn't it? So our return outward will be in positive, and Excel has already put them in positive because we will be reducing our purchases, and our purchases are in negative format, isn't it? Same to goods withdrawn, isn't it? But also our closing inventory needs to be in positive because So I'll rub that one there. Our closing inventory needs to be in positive because it will be reducing our purchases. It is less, and our purchases is in negative format. So our closing inventory will be in positive. I think you're getting. So I'll just take it directly. Goes here. So that one will be in positive. So that one is the adjustment I wanted you to note. So here I'll remove that one equals. So sum, isn't it? I pressed up from opening stock, isn't it? Control enter, control bold, so that it's seen, isn't it? So from there I forgot something, so I'll come here, I select the two boxes, control shift plus, move the cells down, isn't it? What had I forgotten? Gross profit, isn't it? Control bold, gross profit. Also the bolt didn't work, gross profit, isn't it? Control bold, isn't it? So remember, equal sign. So our cost of sale, it is in negative format. So we will add, so it will be net revenue plus cost of sale, isn't it? Control enter, Alt HBP for a top border. So you can see other incomes here. It was discount received, isn't it? It is in positive format, but the expenses will be in negative format. So that is the benefit of Excel, isn't it? So we come here, control bold, shift operating profit. Tab equals, so it will be our gross profit, isn't it? Plus the sum of, isn't it? So I'll introduce sum. I pressed up and the sum of everything. Control enter. I did not close the bracket, so I'll just press enter again, isn't it? Control bolt, Alt HBU for two bottom borders and one above, isn't it? That one there is the statement. I'll do Alt HBT, isn't it? And then I also repeat so that it just look a little bit cleaner. Alt HBT looks a little bit cleaner that way, isn't it? So we'll move now to the draft statement of financial position. Statement of financial position, isn't it? Statement of financial position. I'll merge, and then I'll now start on the statement of financial position. So first thing off, we start with PPE. So we are starting with non-current assets, isn't it? So I just go to my tab column and look what non-current assets do we have. Isn't it good withdrawn? We took care of it. Repayment. Actually, I think there is no other non-current asset, isn't it? We'll go to current assets. So our current assets, so maybe I skip a line, isn't it? Our current assets, we have the receivables. So here, we start with receivables, Control C, Control V. We also have closing inventory, Control C, Control V. We also have cash and cash equivalent, Control C, Control V. And remember, the reason I'm taking Control C and Control V, if you just change, like let me show you here, isn't it? For example, I didn't write the N, isn't it? Enter. You can see it will not reflect anything. So that's why I'm using Control. It must, what is in the tab column must be the same as what is here, isn't it? Then so cash and cash equivalent. So administrative drawings, return inward purchases, other income. Okay, allowance of doubtful debt. So allowance of doubtful debt is a contra asset. That one you know, isn't it? Control V. Then what prepayments? Isn't it? To make sure you've taken everything, prepayments, Control C, Control V. Then what else? Goods withdrawn, we took care. Please mute if your mic is on, other incomes. So maybe we go to equity and liability. I'll not write the part of equity and liability. I'll just keep a line, isn't it? Equal sign. We'll start with, I'll not do equal sign. I'll go directly to copy and paste. So share capital, we are under equity, Control C. Isn't it? I just keep Control V. Obviously, we must have retained earnings because no dividend was paid. We've not been told of any cases of dividends. Then now we'll be finishing drawings also falls there. So make sure what you wrote here is what you are writing here, or you just copy if you don't want to confuse, isn't it? Drawings, enter. So also drawings falls there, isn't it? Then so I'll just start from up. So we go first to the other thing, payables. Isn't it? Then we have accruals. And remember, this one are just draft accruals. So just to confirm our balance sheet prepayments, accruals, PPE. So that's why I was saying you write this way. It would be easy for you to confirm cash and cash equivalent. Then you can see all of them are profit and loss drawings. I've taken it, isn't it? Balance sheet drawings, I've taken it. Balance sheet allowance of doubtful debts, I've taken it. Payables, I've taken it. Share capital, I've taken it, isn't it? It looks like we've taken everything. So I just remove the borders so that it looks a little bit cleaner. Alt HBM, remove the borders first. Maybe I could have already done the first border, or it's not a must, I'll do later. So I come. So the formula is here, sum ifs equal sum if, not sum ifs. So I'll show you maybe at a later date on how to use sum ifs. The difference is when the criteria are many. So the range, remember the range is where we are our tag column, isn't it? As say, the range is our tag column. Sorry, up to there, isn't it? And make sure now this range is fully locked. I told you my laptop is not taking F4. Sorry. So I'm locking the L. Isn't it? I start with the 7 because the cursor decided so. Then I do the L. So I'm looking individually because you see, like, well, let me do with shift, you see. Sorry, Control Z to go back. My F4 is not working, so I just lock with 4, shift 4. Isn't it? Shift 4 again. Then I come here, comma, criteria. So criteria is what we are looking for, from this range, isn't it? So we'll be looking for this one opposite us, isn't it? Be looking for PPE receivables that way, isn't it? Comma, the sum range. Now, which sum will we be adding, isn't it? So the sum range will be adding the net balance. Isn't it? Make sure you lock it. So I lock with 4 again. Shift 4. Shift 4. shift 4, shift 4, isn't it? Then I'll close my brackets, shift 0, control enter, isn't it? You can see, maybe just we finish, then I show you guys how it comes about. Isn't it? So you can see allowance of doubtful debt as a negative because it's a contra asset. It reduces our receivables. So total assets. So it was doing control ball. It had already done the drag part, so I'll just remove. Then I'll do sum, or you can do alt equals. Sorry, never started with the sign. So equals sum, press tab, I add, control enter, control bolt, alt HBU, isn't it? So I can, maybe I don't want to again start writing the formula again, isn't it? I can just come to any here, even the receivables. I do control C. I come here to share capital, control alt V, then formula, isn't it? Okay. You can see that actually it is of a negative, so I'll put negative in front of the formula. Negative there, enter, isn't it? Then I drag down. Isn't it? Remember, our drawings will be reducing our, because it's drawings for personal use, isn't it? So total equity and liability, control board. Tab equals sum, press, I add the whole thing, I do control enter, isn't it? Control board, alt HBU. You can see it's not balancing, don't worry, because of our retained earnings here equals, be taking the one up here, isn't it? I think it's balancing, isn't it? Duly balanced. Because actually retained earning is the operating profit of the year. Here we never had the tax issue, so alt HBT. Then I'll do also alt HBT, isn't it? You can see that, so maybe I just repeat here, alt HBU. You can see now that also our draft statement of financial position has balanced. I think now actually you can relate and see how journal entries are very important, isn't it? Journal entries are very important. You must know how you enter the journal entries properly. So I told you the file will be saved. So, and maybe at the end of the lesson, and also you must remember this just as a reminder, asset and expenses have a debit entry, liabilities and income have a credit entry. Once you know that, there's nothing you can do, isn't it? So the question was of 20 marks. You can see if you knew journal entries where you can be, isn't it? We'll go to the next question because as we wait for the time. So Jamie Limited, isn't it? I'll read the question. Oh, sorry, I had some chats. Okay. I kindly repeat on the SAMI formula. Locking, I told you do with F4. Okay, someone is telling me the locking I can do with Fn. I'll try. The range criteria were also negative and positive. So, because let's just go back. I want people to understand, isn't it? You see, let me come here. You see, isn't it? We are here at the net column balance, isn't it? We are here the net column balance. So you can see net column balance. This balance I said, this one is debit minus credit, isn't it? So, like for example, our revenue, you see, like, let me see. You see for our revenue here, it was an income, isn't it? So if we minus debit minus credit, the income will be in negative format, isn't it? That's why we put negative in front of the formula so that it changes to positive. And something that was like selling and distribution, you see it was in positive format. So when it comes on this side, it will be in negative. Selling and distribution, it will be on negative. That's why we put negative in front of the sign. So while we are adding, we don't consider whether we will be just adding. We will not be considering whether it's an expense or a positive, because Excel has already taken care of that. Let me repeat here the sum if equals sum if, press tab, isn't it? We've been asked of the range. So the range is your tag column. What are you going to call this? This account or this account in the respective statements, isn't it? I told you the range is the tag column. You take the tag column, isn't it? Then let me try Fn. It's not locking. But F4 locks properly. I think most do F4, so I'll just lock with 4. So this locking, you see, if you have the ability to try on your computer, you just press F4. But on this laptop that I'm using, the school laptop actually, it does not lock with F4. So I'll lock manually with Shift and 4, isn't it? So I do Shift 4. But if you press F4, it just locks immediately, the whole thing, isn't it? F4 again, then here, but I repeated the formula F4, isn't it? Also here, F4, isn't it? After that one, I come here, I put comma, now to go, you see what is bold? If I remove the comma, I'm still at the range, isn't it? If I put comma, I go to criteria. So criteria is, what am I looking for from this tag column? So what I'm looking for the words that I've named them revenue, isn't it? I'm looking for the words that I've named them revenue. And I'm not locking this one because I'll drag down. When I drag down, I want it to move to retained earnings, to net revenue, to opening stock, that way, isn't it? Then I press comma. Sum range. Which range are you using to add the values that you are looking for? So the net balance is what I'm using, isn't it? I take the net balance and I lock it because I don't want it to move down. Because if you don't lock it, it will move down and you will not obtain the results, isn't it? F4. And maybe I'll need some positive comments on the wall about today's class, whether the college has done the improvements that were needed for the online class to be a little bit stable, isn't it? Then I close the brackets after locking. I do Control Enter, Control Backspace to jump to the active cell. There is where you can see it has just removed this revenue here and placed it here. And it has begun with a negative sign. And because I don't want negatives to begin with negative sign, I put negative in front of the formula. I'm coming to the chart immediately after there. Maybe post your question, becomes positive. So I'm on the chart. Okay. Okay, the revision will be shared. So I've repeated on the one flow, Fn plus 4. So maybe just let me take you slowly first. Here, isn't it, equal sign? When you are introducing a formula, you start with equal sign, isn't it? It can be any formula. Maybe we are here, we're just using some ifs. isn't it? Some if, isn't it? After here, make sure the formula you want to use, it is in blue. Here in blue. If it is in blue, you press tab. It will automatically launch with the opening parenthesis, isn't it? It will automatically launch with the opening parenthesis. After you press tab, then we do that. And because the formula, it is here, I'll just drag it down. And it will copy return out inwards. Remember, let me show you here. Now this is the benefit of Excel. You see, where is it here? It is returned inwards, isn't it? Like we sold some goods to the client and the client has returned the goods inward. So it means it reduces our revenue. And you can see that Excel has already taken it as a negative because it reduces the revenue. I think you are getting it, isn't it? As simple as that. And maybe you are to skip, isn't it? You are to skip there. You can just copy, Control C, and also you can just paste directly. But if you say if I paste directly, the opening stock cannot be found on the adjusted trial balance, because the adjusted trial balance, we are talking of the closing balances. The opening stock cannot be there, isn't it? Maybe we go to purchases. We drag just down, isn't it? You can see purchases, it is being taken in as a negative. In short, with this formula or with this model, now Excel will take, if money is going out, it becomes negative. So purchases, we are buying, isn't it? It becomes negative. And when you look at something like goods withdrawn, you know, goods withdrawn will be positive because we will be reducing our purchases, isn't it? And our purchases are in negative format. So to reduce them, the number should be in positive format, and also same to the closing inventory. We are just saying less closing inventory, isn't it? Let me show you. You see, like here for PPE. Now for PPE maybe made people a little bit. So it is here. You can see property, plant and equipment and furniture at cost. It was this one, and we had also the accumulated depreciation, isn't it? So PPE will be just, so you know the net book value. Net book value is equals to the value there. Where is it? So it is here, the 60 minus, but because also will not minus, because our accumulated depreciation is already in negative format. You add the accumulated depreciation, you get the net book value, and you can see that that's what is recorded. 28,740, isn't it? It is here, 28,740. Here, maybe if you want the commas so that you can easily see, just click here on the commas, and you can easily see, isn't it? So this one is a simple one. So this one is preparation of financial statement. We started with a very simple one that was talking of, it focused more on journal entries, and we also take the second one, which also focuses more on journal entries. Then now we'll start on something serious like the matrix limited. We see the additional information, isn't it? But it's just the same thing. We also go to Darubini. After that, we'll go to statement of cash flows. And then I'll be sending now the file after we've done statement of cash flows, while sending in 2 assignments. There are 2 assignments coming in. The one is similar to these two, something serious. So the one will be something on this one, and then the next one will be the statement of cash flows. The assignment will be on your own, so that maybe you see how we are grasping the concept. Let me just check. Okay, I appreciate great improvement. Kindly work on sending the videos. Okay, we will work also on sharing of the videos, isn't it? So maybe we just take our time and do Jamii, because it's a simple thing. So Jamii Limited. So I'll go to trial balance. Faster, trial balance. Isn't it? We have the debit, and then we have the credit, isn't it? Then So we just start, because this one is a simple concept thing. We just start with so the following information was extracted from the books of Jamii Limited, which started operation on 1st January 2023. The following transaction took place during the month of January. We've been given the transaction, the details, and the amount respectively. Additional information, we've been told of the bonded upon rate of 5% per annum. We've also been told that equipment depreciates on straight line for 10 years with no salvage value. We've also been told of closing inventory was 26,000. And you've also been told of what else? The assistant will not be paid for the first 2 weeks until 10 February. And then no services were completed for the customer who paid in advance. So the transactions are here. The things you are not seeing where they are. So we just go straight to the show balance. And here is where journal entries also, like journal entries applies everywhere. Even the max limit, budget limited, we will work with journal entries. So it's very important. So the first January, they said raised cash by issuing shares, isn't it? So here, I don't want to go writing that that now I'll debit the cash and then credit the share capital, isn't it? Now I'll not go writing that one. I'll just go straight forward share capital, isn't it? Then cash, isn't it? You are working with those two, isn't it? So if you raised cash by issuing shares, it means the money is coming in. So our cash will increase, isn't it? And the corresponding entry is we crediting the share capital, the same amount, isn't it? So these ones at our balance already we are creating. Merge, control bolt. I also bolden the two. Control bolt, isn't it? Next, we find that raised cash by issuing bonds, isn't it? It means we'll be debiting our cash. So our cash will remain there. We add 250. Double entry, very important. So this one, I don't want it to reflect to that one. So I take it directly from here so that it doesn't change, isn't it? So we've already debited here the 250, isn't it? The account is bonds payable. Of 250. Isn't it? Very simple. Then we go to purchase an equipment with cash. So cash will be reducing. I credit the cash. Equals, so I credit the cash. Isn't it? Then purchased equipment. So I'll debit equipment. Journal entries, very important. The same amount. Isn't it? Move to the next thing. Purchased a 2-year insurance policy with cash. So it means we paid, isn't it? We'll be crediting our cash. Isn't it? The 48. So if we credit our cash, prepaid insurance for 2 years, isn't it? And we are only on the first month, so prepaid insurance. Which amount to press tab equals? What was it there? Isn't it? We come here, purchased goods on credit, isn't it? Maybe I just make the credit look properly. So if we purchased goods on credit, the first account that you know it's accounts payable, isn't it? The payables. We will pay them later, payables. So our payables increases. If our payables increases, what do we credit? Isn't it? Because it's a liability, as said earlier. Then which account will it affect? It should be inventory, isn't it? Our inventory will increase by the 30. As simple as that. We move to the next thing. hired an assistant with an annual pay of 60,000, isn't it? So you come here to here. So they say, you see this one actually has two double entries, isn't it? First, salary and wages. So you know, obviously you will have to be paid salary and wages, isn't it? So, and we've been told on additional information number 4 that the assistant will not be paid for the first 2 weeks until 10 February. So remember when the assistant was hired, 2015. So 15 to February, it's 2 weeks, isn't it? So for the 2 weeks, we will not be paid. So if we debit our salary, let me just, so it will be the amount, isn't it? You multiply by 2 weeks over 52 because it was annually. So an year has 52 weeks. So, but you will not be paid for the first 2 weeks. Don't worry why I'm inputting that one. So we'll have accrued salaries because you will not be paid. So the account will be debiting will be accrued salaries. So maybe let me just call this one salary so that it doesn't confuse me when I go to writing, isn't it? So the account will be crediting, it will be accrued salary, isn't it? Continue. Cash sales, isn't it? So cash sales, our cash increases, isn't it? We come here, we add. It was increasing by how many? Cash sales, 15, isn't it? Enter. Then what account will we be debiting? Our sales or our revenue account, isn't it? Let me call it revenue, better name. So we will be crediting our revenue. I told you revenue is income. That's why we have to credit it. The same amount, 15, isn't it? We go to the next thing. Where is it? Credit sales, isn't it? What account does it affect? Receivables. Isn't it account receivables? Affects account receivables. So account receivables will increase, isn't it? So we'll credit our account receivables. What account will we debit? The revenues, isn't it? The still revenue account. So I'll add the 3,000, isn't it? We move on. Received cash in advance from a customer. We have the cash account, isn't it? So the cash increases because he has received cash from a customer, isn't it? The 5,000 there. Enter. Then what account will it be affected? We introduce another account called an earned revenue. An earned revenue, isn't it? So the revenue we are being paid, but we have not performed any service. So an earned revenue of 5,000, isn't it? Then the next thing you are being told that paid for the goods bought on credit, isn't it? So the payables, we will debit our payables to reduce our payable and repay the full amount, isn't it? The corresponding is to credit the cash, isn't it? Plus the 30,000. We move to the next thing. Customer on credit made a partial payment of 1,000. So the customer on credit was receivables, isn't it? So he's making a payment. It means we are reducing our receivables, isn't it? So we debit. We credit our receivables to reduce them. And which account does it affect? Cash, because we are being paid. Isn't it double entry? Now we go to additional information, isn't it? So the additional information, the first thing is the bond had a coupon rate of 5% per annum. When you hear this, what comes first in your mind? Interest expense. So interest expense equals, so it's 5%, isn't it? So I'll just write 50%. You multiply by the bond that was issued, isn't it? And remember, we are only working on January, isn't it? 1 divided by 12. These transactions are on January. They are not of the year, isn't it? The interest has not been paid because we are told the interest, but it has not been paid. So we'll be crediting an account called interest payable as a liability, isn't it? Interest payable with the same amount equal that one. Then we move to additional information number 2, isn't it? So number two says equipment depreciates on 10% for 10 years straight line basis, isn't it? It brings in depreciation. Isn't it equal? So what will be the depreciation? If the equipment, it is 75 divided by 10 for the 10 years, isn't it? We multiply by 1/12 because we are only dealing with January, isn't it? So, you know what account are we going to? So here, you can decide to there. I told you accumulated depreciation is a contra asset, like it reduces the equipment, isn't it? So you can decide directly to you credit the equipment instead of also creating the accumulated depreciation account. You can decide just to credit the equipment directly. You have already less the depreciation, isn't it? Because this company, remember, it is starting operation on 1st January 2023, and we've been given the transaction of January. So there is no previous depreciation, isn't it? Then we go to note number 3, which they say account, the closing inventory was 26,000. You remember how we entered inventory in the last example? Sorry, I have charts. So the salary has not been paid. You see, like let me talk to the. I want the positive comments on WhatsApp because you see, last class said some negative comments. I almost. You see, the management is also on that WhatsApp actually. So they thought it was my fault, but it was the internet. So, okay. For salaries, what about the balance for accrued salary? In short, what I'm saying is that you see, we're just making an accounting cycle for January. We have not moved to February, and he will not be paid. And remember, he was hired on 15 January, isn't it? So there are like 2 weeks to reach 1st February or 31st January, where we'll be making where we are like making our accounting cycle, isn't it? So, and he will not be paid until 10 February, isn't it? So it means this salary has accrued. It was to be paid, but has accrued. Like the other name for accrued, it's outstanding, isn't it? It has not been paid. Then we go to closing inventory. Closing inventory. Okay, closing inventory was 26,000. So you remember in the last example, how we did on closing inventory, isn't it? We are looking for the balance, isn't it? So let me remember, here is just an example. We have 30,000, isn't it? That we had, isn't it? That we bought. So we bought inventory here, 30,000, isn't it? And we are remaining with 26,000. Isn't it? We are remaining with 26,000, isn't it? So, like in simple terms, our inventory account, how do we move from 30 to 26,000? It means like we are reducing our inventory, isn't it? It means we will credit our inventory with 4,000 so that the closing inventory will be 26, isn't it? And the account that we will be debiting is the P&L or profit and loss, isn't it? The 4,000. I think you are getting the double entry, isn't it? The 4,000, isn't it? Then number 5, number 4, we have already talked a bit, is the part where the salaries and accrued salaries comes in, isn't it? So okay, let me just continue. So no services were completed for the customer who paid advance. So it means that that one will just remain as an earned revenue because no services were completed. So I think we are almost finishing. So, but there's something we are missing. We have also the prepaid insurance, isn't it? So remember, we have already taken 1 month, isn't it? Are you getting it? We have already taken 1 month, but we had prepaid for 2 months. So, like we must remove the prepaid for that month. For example, isn't it? We prepaid purchased a 2-year, isn't it? 2 years has 24 months. Let me just write here so that you understand this one. 2 years has 24 months, isn't it? And we have only taken 1 month, isn't it? 1 month, isn't it? So so we have to accumulate for the insurance expense for the year, for the month, isn't it? So insurance expense so what equals, it was 48, isn't it? This 48 was for 2 years of 24, isn't it? So like 24 months for the 2 years. So what was the for the month, isn't it? 2,000. Are you getting that one? So that one we will, because we have debited the insurance expense, we will credit the prepaid insurance with the same amount. So I think everything is over. I'll just remove this one there, delete, isn't it? I make the table a little bit. I just add in the small things I do add. So maybe just for a trial balance, actually it must balance, or it will not be called a trial balance, isn't it? Control enter. Then I'll do Alt HBP for a top border. Then I drag, isn't it? It's balancing. I'll just take the numbers. I want to 2 decimal places and the comma at 1,000 so that the numbers are easily seen, isn't it? The balancing figure, do them as control bolt. Then I just do this way, Alt HBT for the borders, Alt HBT for the borders also, isn't it? Then now I'll take also this one, I put the border there, Alt HBT, isn't it? So as I go by now, Where am I? I'm at net balance, isn't it? I am at net balance. So net balance equals the debit minus the credit, isn't it? I drag down. Isn't it? Now we go, I'll do RHBT for the border, isn't it? I go to tag column, isn't it? Tag, control enter, control bolt, isn't it? Okay, okay, like maybe I think we'll continue from there. Just let me just finish the tag column, because actually we will also go with the time, isn't it? So this one will be just called share capital. There will be no differences. And because you can see, because our statement is a little bit like, what can I say? It's small. I can just do Control C, then I do Control V. So I leave this as an assignment, isn't it? This PL doesn't reflect first, isn't it? So let me just remove the borders, RHBN, RHBR, HBL, isn't it? So class, let me just put it at class, isn't it? This one is caps lock, balance sheet, balance sheet, balance sheet, balance sheet, balance sheet, balance sheet, balance sheet.
Kubera
Loss,
kareba mfite amafaranga se
profit and loss, balance sheet, balance sheet,
ibyo ni ibiki
isn't it? P&L,
kubera ko udashaka telefone kandi uyifite
P&L, then the other one P&L, isn't it? So on your own, make sure you have completed and prepared the account, because up to here actually you have finished everything, isn't it? Make sure you have prepared the statement of profit and loss, and also the balance sheet or the statement of financial position, isn't it? And the file I'll be sending over after we've completed the whole thing.
ikoranabuhanga uzi ko ubona kashi mfite nshobora kumara n'amezi angahe nta
So the
kashi
class ends there. Thank you for today. I hope today the class ends there.
ariko ugomba kumenya nuza ugomba kujyana n'iterambere ibyo ni n'imico mibi bwira na